create a soft, smooth layer, you actually want to do this wet on wet. This is my test piece where I'm explaining like how to blend the colors, what colors to start with. So let's start with a step one. The first thing you want to do is wet the paper. But it's not just a matter of going through it one time. You actually want to take your time wetting the paper. I suggest wetting each petal for 1, maybe 2 minutes, even 3 minutes is okay. It just depends how large your paper is. Sometimes when we're in a hurry, we just want to get to the point of applying colors, but then we run into this issue of like, okay, the paper's too dry. I can't continue applying colors. This is why you want to spend that extra time wetting the paper. Another thing is, it depends on what paper you choose for a specific painting. If you choose a hot pressed watercolor paper, the paper will still dry super fast because there's no texture. So I suggest using like a cold pressed with a nice texture, 100% cotton watercolor paper so you have enough time to apply colors wet on wet. Create a gray using primary colors. These specific lilies that I'm painting, the sides are off-white, so there's some white in there. This is a reason why I decided to start with this grayish mix. So I'm thinking of it like, okay, as if the petals are white because the edges are white. So to create that shade of white, all I need is yellow, blue, red, because that's how you basically create a shade of gray. It's just a matter of how much red, yellow, or blue you add to that blend to determine if it's a yellow, gray, blue, gray, or red, gray. So that's why I'm starting with a yellow, blue, red, but in some areas I'm adding a little more yellow. And I want that yellow to make that red pop. I just want some color that will basically bleed a little bit toward these edges. I'll still keep them white-ish. The next step is to add these rich reds. So once I'm okay with the undertones, I have these kind of the shade of gray and then some yellows, I start pushing in these reds, rich reds. In this case, I just have bright rose and quinacridone red. After that, the next step is to also add a little bit of a color for shadows. In this case, I'm using a little bit of blue. Now, complementary color to red is green, but green is created by a combination of yellow and blue together. That's why I'm also just basically okay with just using the shade of blue here. So in some of these petals, I need to use way more of that, but just remember something that's very important. To create a natural shade of shadows is first to locate what is the local color of that object. So if my lilies are pink, which is kind of red, then I do need to think about, okay, if I was creating like this real cast shadow, I'm actually gonna add a little bit of green to that blend to create the shadow. However, it's also okay just to go with the blue because green is created by a combination of yellow and blue together, right? And yellow, we're already using yellow anyway in those undertones. Next step is to add some detail. So you can use a small round brush or you can use a rigger brush. One of my favorite brushes is just a rigger brush, but you can use either to create veins. Now, how do you add veins? It's best to really add veins that you want them to look soft, wet on wet. So the softer veins that you see, and if you are going for that softer, smoother look, you want to apply these veins wet on wet. You need a creamy paint on the tip of your brush and then just using the tip of your brush to apply these lines. And if it becomes like the paint just spreads too much, that means you need to wait a little bit for the paper to settle a bit. Maybe the paper needs to feel more damp, and then use that cream top like ratio between water and paint, and I'm referring to dairy. We also have like these dots, and whenever you have like smaller details, maybe you just have brown spot over like a leaf, doesn't have to be a petal, but you see some brown spots. This is actually a technique I use, which is just using a creamy paint on the tip of your smaller brush and applying it also wet on wet. And again, it doesn't have to be like, the paper doesn't need to be like super wet. You just want to add it like toward the end when the paper starts to feel damp. And then we have these details, which is just stamens. I use specifically for this masking fluid for watercolors, just so I have nice clean areas to apply the pinks with some green with red over the tiny little pollen areas. So that's all it is for painting these lilies, and there's a full class. It's a real-time recorded class on Patreon. So if you would like to learn how to paint these lilies with me step by step, I'm guiding you all the way through. It's not just a voiceover tutorial. I talk in real time, just like in all my classes. Please join me. The link is below this video. And anytime you have a question, let me know. If you want to get familiar with what we already have on Patreon, just head over to the index. The link is also below the video. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for your time.